Something else I wanted to ask you because a big part of this, why I do this podcast, is to give people that wouldn't ordinarily have access to someone like you that's had that level of success and learn from you, right? And be able to watch a video and see themselves through you and maybe build their confidence that they can achieve that level of success or in another arena or whatever the case may be, and learning that you're a human, you're a person, and you've gone through challenges and you've worked your way through it and you come out on the other end successful, right? So if there's somebody out there, young person, whether it's a child that's growing up aspiring to become something, or somebody that's early career that wants to be the next Alan Stukalsky, and is watching this right now, what words of encouragement would you offer, or what advice would you give them for enduring adversity and achieving their goals?
There's for someone, especially someone starting out, there's a few things. I think for me, everybody knows I'm a hard worker, and I think hard work goes a long ways to really being successful. I and I tend to say this to a lot to, especially, interns and new hires, right? Is it's dive deep into the topic, try to become an expert in what you're working on, really get to know it and spend your time. I think sometimes there's not enough time in the workday to become the expert on a topic. And sometimes you got to really invest a bit of you to make yourself successful, right? Work is not just the number of hours you're there in the office. It's also the think time sometimes that you have after work, as you're when you wake up or overnight, right? So like for me, it's dive deep, really, get to know, get to know your solution, get to know your product, get to know your customer.
Yeah.
I think for me, we probably don't do it enough as a team, but getting to know our customer and being in front of the customer and really seeing, and from an IT perspective, how they use the products we build,
Yeah.
I think goes further than anything you could do on a project. Change management, anything you can do is that real relationship and understanding goes a long ways.
Okay.
Um, yeah. And then I guess the other piece there, relationships, right, is for me, I try to be somebody that's not about, the title, but more about the relationship. And those relationships matter today and into the future. And people remember, how you make them feel, not, hey, this is the CIO. And I think that's something I try to do and focus on. And I've had a few people say that to me. I don't tend to be the one to introduce myself as, hey, I'm the CIO. That's always very secondary.
Okay. Gotcha. If you could identify maybe some differentiating skills between a senior level leader versus like mid level, what are the key skills that separate those two levels for somebody that's aspiring to get into senior leadership?
Um, I think one big piece that's different for me, and this was I'll tell you a little story and when I was mid-level and I was growing in my career, I think the importance, especially even in IT, the importance of finance and accounting and understanding the numbers
Mm,
and how that drives your success between mid-level and more senior level is, I think, for me, the big one of the biggest pivots. And I had a controller about, yeah, also about 15, 13, 14, 15 years ago, somewhere in that range when I first got back to Ronstad. And he said to me, man, these finance people are just walking circles around you. You don't even, you can't, you're not keeping up with the numbers. So what did I do is I went to Georgia State University at night and took a couple of classes and took an accounting class, took a finance class, understood how to read P&Ls better and what all the fun financial terms really mean and how they're calculated. And I think that's for me helped me go from mid-level to more senior level and be more successful. So, and I think that's appropriate for every, even an HR leader becoming a CHRO, well, finance is a bad example, marketing leader becoming a CMO. I think all of those, as you get higher in the organization, the finance acumen and the business numbers acumen becomes more important. And for me, it required taking some classes, which is a lot easier to do now than it was going after night classes.
Yeah.
But I highly recommend that for somebody that really wants to be a leader in an organization. And then obviously the other part is being a leader of a single team versus being a leader of leaders also is a big pivot from you got to get out of, let's say, the weeds and get out of all the details. And that's sometimes people do it better than others. Sometimes I do it better than others, or better. I could do it better. Let me say it that way.
Okay.
And I think that's something that I've always worked on is I my tendency and my desire, and I really enjoy the details, and I try to not go there, and I have to remind myself of that often.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. That's tough for a lot of leaders. I've witnessed that too. It can be hard transitioning when you're used to doing things yourself and being more
Yeah.
hands-on to work through other people. It just takes practice and growing through it and taking a different approach. And what you said about the financial aspect, I think that's big too. Especially I watched you go through financial updates and work through budgets and do things like that and be very well versed now. So knowing that at one point you actually
It
struggled
was
with
not
it.
that good. No, not at all.
Okay. Okay. So another place where there's hope for people that maybe struggle with it now, just take some classes, man. Just if you're lacking
Yeah.
in something, just build the skills. Nobody's perfect,
Yeah.
right?
It's all online now, right? So you could do it on your own time, and it's actually very, very much available.
Yeah, absolutely. So non-work question. So what are three things that you know now about life that you wish you'd known sooner?
Hmm. Okay. Think I think as so one item, and I'm trying to think of three. I wasn't prepared for this one but anyway. Okay. So um three things that I know now. I think first one I would start with is time management and managing your schedule is critically important. And a lot of people have always asked me, because again, I mentioned earlier I'm a very hard worker,
Yeah.
but the way I've balanced my career, my schedule, and my time, um, I wish I had learned that sooner. And as I got further in my career and having a family and children and so forth, I learned how important it was to have that focus time and try to really be present in where you are and focus on where you are and not try to limit distractions, right? So I always told people one of my best practices, or one of the things I tried to do, and this was not always easy, but I tried to make sure when I left the office, back when we were in the office every day, or even now when I'm at home, I try to shut down at a certain time every day. And I'm not going to say the time because then people will say that's too many hours, but try to shut down and then do the family thing, do the dinner, spend the time doing something that's not just on your phone with the family and the kids. Try to really invest in those relationships, and
Yeah.
that's hugely important. And
Yeah.
then if you've got to catch up, do that at the end of the day sometimes. So that is a bit of what I used to do and still do. So that's a big learning that I wish I had gotten better at that earlier. Or early on in my career, I think I just would try to work until the work was done. And as everybody I'm sure now knows and appreciates, the work's never done. There's always more. I think another piece for me that I've touched on and has really helped me over the last few months is the relationships are hugely important, and build relationships at every level, because you never know when you're going to need them. And
Yeah.
the hard part is always trying to keep those relationships fresh and in touch. But people want to help and people are interested in really making everyone successful. And those are the types of people you want to be with.
Hmm.
And building those relationships are hugely important. And then the last thing I wish I learned earlier is don't and I think that the whole agile world of agile methodology strives on this, which is relatively a new IT concept in the last, let's say, ten years ago, maybe it became much more popular. Is don't try striving for perfection is a Ronstadt goal, but don't wait for perfection to really see the value and the progress you're making. And I
Okay.
think early on in my career, I would always, do too much to try and get the product and the solution and everything I was building back in the days when I was a developer and managing big projects was, perfection is not always the answer. Progress beats perfection, and especially nowadays with the way things work in technology, people are much more accustomed to constant release and upgradings and updates on a regular basis has become more the common way of working.
Yeah. So you mentioned relationship building. So some of the disposition and skills that it takes to be successful when you're an individual contributor in IT sometimes aren't aligned with what it takes to be a good leader because maybe you're analytical, right? Maybe even an introvert. And so I've noticed that sometimes it can be a tough transition for a person that's doing that type of work to build those people skills needed um, at higher levels of the organization, right? And you talked about the importance of building relationships. So can you talk about like what are the benefits to someone that's in IT that's maybe just kind of hands-on right now? What are the benefits to building relationships to their career progression, and why should they kind of step outside their shell? Because it might not come naturally for them. They're going to need to know why they should do it and what the benefit is.
Yeah, I think, even somebody that's, much more of an introvert and let's say likes to stay in their shell, I think there's very few jobs out in the world today where you're not working hand in hand with somebody every day.
Okay.
Pretty much every one of our developers that would rather just look at the code sometimes has to work with the business analyst, has to work with the quality assurance person. Obviously, they're leaders as well, and you're always in today's work world, you're always part of a team, and building those relationships not only helps you be successful on the team because you communicate as to where you're going, what you're doing, and how you can help the team grow, but also the ability for someone to build a relationship outside of their bubble of what they work on every day, I think goes a long way to understanding what else is out there. And hopefully even those introverts are interested enough to learn what else is out there, to see what another team looks like, what are the challenges somewhere else, how can they even is that something that they'd be interested in, because I know there's people that just like what they do and would want to do that for a very long time, but most people eventually run into a wall where they want to change.
Yeah.
And when you hit that, having those relationships helps you understand what else is out there and what other teams do, what other businesses do, and that is important to being able to pivot and to move to that next level if that's something you're interested in.
Okay. So expanding their breadth of knowledge to know what's out there, maybe connecting the dots. You've talked a lot about that, understanding things
Yeah,
holistically, right? Would be a
yeah, yeah.
benefit. Okay.
Understanding the why, yeah. Being able
Yeah.
to ask those questions, yeah.
Yeah. And then maybe the visibility of it, people knowing what they bring to the table. If there's opportunities that
Mhm.
surface, maybe it expands opportunities too.